One, two.
Hi,
Hi, Erin.
Hi, Emmy.
Welcome to the Video and Vinyl Club. I am Emmy Wildwood. I'm a musician, a producer, and an art director.
And I am Erin Mars. I'm a writer, director, musician, actor, bunch of other things. And we are so excited for you to join us today on the Video and Vinyl Club because we have a very special guest, someone who's been a longtime friend of mine who I've played with in different musical projects, who is awesome. And we're excited to have him here. And he is Lee Leshen.
Woo, 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 woo.
Hi.
Hi, Lee. So
Hi, I'm
Lee,
super excited to be here.
yeah. Lee is the producer of the documentary The House From, which is very popular right now on Apple TV. And they talk about different houses from different movies. So we're here to talk about that, but we also want to talk about all things Lee. What do you think, Lee?
Oh, yeah, all things. Okay. Well, it was a long labor, apparently, according to my mother. I was born at 11:30 in the morning. Yeah, I always like to get a late start of the day. I don't need to be up
Yeah.
at 6 or 7 in the morning. Like it was like whatever it is can wait.
Erin tells me that you've worked on a lot of really great documentaries, and we want to hear about some of the other projects you've been on and how it all got started.
Sure. So I started basically I got an Apple TV and I never really had Apple TV before. And so now I was like I wasn't really tech savvy. I was like, wait a minute, so now like all the stuff that's on my computer is on my television. And this is great because I don't have to look at a small screen anymore. So I was like, I want to just go to YouTube and just watch all these different things. And I was like, I wonder if there's a Back to the Future documentary because back in the days of like scrolling for things to watch, you can see on a guide for on TNT or whatever, it might say, on the guide, Back to the Future 1, then Back to the Future 2, then Back to the Future 3. And I was like, oh my God, it was like 6 or 7 hours now ahead of me of just Back to the Future. I'm canceling my plans, And I was like, there's gotta be other people out there that have that kind of affinity for the movie and for the franchise. So I looked up, I wanted to learn a little bit more. And I was seeing Back to the Future behind the scenes clips and things like that. But I wanted to see what was like a documentary about it, a real documentary about it. And there was nothing out there, but there was a Kickstarter for a documentary. So I saw that and I reached out to the people running the Kickstarter and I said, listen, I've had a little experience in the business. I've worked in a couple of studios and I'm a big fan of Back to the Future. I'd love to be a part of this. So I ended up hopping on that as a producer. And then me and the director, Jason Aaron, and executive producer, Louis Kruvich, we had a great time going and interviewing Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd and Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale and then the fans as well, because a lot of the movies that we do, they really dig into the nostalgia by seeing, what's the legacy of this, not just how do you get it from script to production to screen, but also it's 30 years later. At the time, it was coming up on Future Day, October 21st, 2015, which is the furthest that Marty goes in the future in part 2.
Wild.
So that was coming up. So we were going to have, a real Back to the Future day, and because everything else was 1985 or 1955, so it already happened. So we released the movie on Future Day, and there was a lot of excitement leading up to that. And we got to interview fans, we got to go to Comic Cons, we got to really embrace the culture. So we did that with Back to the Future, and then Tommy Avalone, who directed The House From, but was producing a Ghostbusters documentary specifically about not just the film, but also the fandom community, because there's actually Ghostbusters franchises all over the world where people will dress in screen accurate costumes. They'll have proton packs, and they will go out and they'll raise money for charity. They'll go to hospitals, children's hospitals, and they'll cheer up the kids and things like that. It's an amazing community, and it's a really positive community. And so the ability to go and interview not just Ivan Reitman, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson, people like that, but we also got to again interview the fans and go to the Comic Cons and do panels there and meet the fans in person. I have a proton pack now, and I have my own Ghostbusters jumpsuit, and I'm an honorary member of the New York City Ghostbusters and I believe the New Jersey Ghostbusters, and I'm proud as heck to be a member of it. And the certificates are in my office, and I look at them every day, and it just warms my heart.
I feel like
So yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, you did mention that you had worked at a couple studios before. So just like your own career in film, did you always, when you were a little kid, want to work in film? And did you have
yes.
any idea of what you did? And did you have any idea of what the different jobs were? Like, did you know what a producer was at that point? You're a pretty smart person.
I still don't know what a producer does.
Yeah.
We're basically wedding planners, and every day is a new wedding, and that's really what it is. Just make sure that the glassware and the flowers are there on time, and then it's up to the bride and groom after that. I always wanted to do this. When I was a kid, I would watch TV, and I was like, okay, that's the world I want to be in. And then when I was 16, I was able to get an internship at a casting agency, and I had gotten the interview, and they asked me what year of school I was in, and I said junior because I was going in my junior year of high school. They thought, because I basically look like this since my bar mitzvah, so like they kind of thought like, all right, he's a junior in college, and it wasn't until they were talking about their senior prom stories one day. And they said, Lee, what was your senior prom? I said, I'll let you know. I haven't got on my junior prom yet. And they were just, I had my working papers. It was perfectly legal for me to be working there. But it was a bit of a misunderstanding that ended up becoming a great job. I ended up working for them every summer for a few summers. And they were valuable mentors. And that was the casting process. Then after that, I kind of switched gears after college and got a job at ICM, which is a talent agency. And I ended up working in their mailroom and working my way up from there. And I was working for a few different motion picture agents, and then I moved into the voiceover department, and then ultimately kind of wanted to make a change. But while at ICM, I worked for some fabulous people, and an agency is a great boot camp because even though it's a top agency, you're still kind of lower on the totem pole in the studio system idea. So like when you're in casting, you're a buyer. So everybody's kind of coming to you, and they're very nice to you. And when you're an agent, you're a seller. So now, you really have to figure out how to get your client's name to the top of your project, at the top of the list of whichever buyer you're approaching. It's an intense environment. I had so much fun there. And I mean, they were saying like, oh, this is an unglamorous job. And like the first week I was delivering a script to Julia Roberts' apartment. I was like, yeah, unglamorous. I don't know. I mean, it was mailroom work, but I loved it. I loved the guys in the mailroom. And I learned the city. I learned the subways real fast, and it was great. And then after that, I left and went into politics briefly for a few years, working for a congressman. Working for a guy who's running for Congress first, and he didn't have and his words were, look, I don't have a prayer. We just want to make our point here and get our statements out and our message. And we ended up winning. And so I stayed with him for a couple of years, and that was great. And then ultimately went over to Miramax and the Weinstein Company. Yeah.
Lee, you mentioned that you worked in the voiceover department at at ICM, and I just want to know, did you get any work? Because I could see you doing some voiceovers.
No. I was a voiceover director. Basically, I was in the booth a lot, and it was a lot of fun. And thank you. That's very nice of you. But no, I really wanted to. I got to. That was the most fun memory of that was working with, we had a voiceover booth in the agency, which is rare. Usually you would call a client and say, Nabisco wants you for a commercial, or HBO wants you for a promo. And you got to go to XYZ Studios, and it's a small little studio. You
Yeah.
go in there, you do your audition, and you leave. Here, and then you never see the as the agent or the I was an assistant. You don't really see the clients. I got to see all my clients because they would come in, and then I got to go in and start directing them for the auditions. So I got to, really spend time with these people and develop friendships. I mean, I'm still friends with Frank Sims, the Kool-Aid Man. He's the oh yeah, that's Frank Sims. He's the like he's the best. He's the best guy. And but I mean, and then there were other people who were newer who didn't have the experience that Frank had, and I'd get to work with them. And then they get their first job, and that would be I would feel good about that because I was like, I had a small part in that. And I loved working with those actors and really trying to, get them going. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Wow, you must have great dinner parties. The Kool-Aid Man.
Yeah. I gotta have him over. It's been a while. Yeah,
Yeah.
Frank is great. Frank sang he sang backup on the River of Dreams album for Billy Joel, and he toured with Billy Joel. Same thing with Billy Idol, not Billy Idol. Oh my God, David Bowie. He toured with Bowie. He sang on what's the one? China Girl.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah, that's him. And then Saturday's TV Fun House on SNL. If you remember that, the Robert Smigel thing, that was him, and he would sing in the bangs, and he was just the best.
So, okay, this is great info because I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about where do you start, like with a career, wanting to get into film or TV, they don't even think about like, oh, there's agencies, or oh, there's different companies that all are part of putting together what ends up being the final product, which is like the documentary or the film. So it's kind of cool to talk about that stuff. Let's talk about Miramax. Tell us about your time at Miramax. What was that like?
Yeah, no, it was fun. I worked for a great guy named John Hannity. John was the head of production finance. So basically, the studio has the money. They have a production company that's going to make the movie. The money has to get from the studio to the production company, and we were kind of John would make sure and taught me and other people that worked in the department, how to read cost reports and how to deal with production accountants and how to say, okay, this month or this week you spent X on, or you spent 2X on wardrobe, and last week you spent X, and what's the difference and why? And then you're asking for X, 3X or another 2X for next week. So we would look at the pages they're shooting and things like that. And then a lot of my job was like processing check requests and wire requests to go through. It was very boring, but I got to learn so much, and it makes you a better production executive later on because you kind of understand. I can if you want to shoot this, it's going to cost this, and it's going to cost this, but we only have this. So how can we make this out of this? And so. And John was a legend in the business, and it was amazing to learn from him. And but getting in there, I remember, I think I did about 10 different interviews. I didn't care where I landed. I just wanted to get into Miramax because it was the only game in New York. I didn't want to go to LA, and I wanted to work at a studio in New York. It didn't matter. I mean, I like Pulp Fiction. I like Reservoir. I like those things, but I didn't have to work. If Disney was here at the time, or if Warner Brothers, I would have applied, but it was just Miramax, and I like the indie, the scrappiness of it. Even though they were owned by Disney, they were kind of when I was working there, they were still this indie mentality, which I loved because you had all these people who had been there since Pulp Fiction, so they were that mentality, and it was a real being in the trenches type of thing, and you had trench mates, and 10 of us would go out to Las Vegas, it was great. I loved every second of it.
Tell us about some of the projects you worked on while you were there. Like, what were some movies being made?
I want to say Gangs in New York. I think Chicago was already done. I don't know how, Nine. I don't know if people, a lot
Oh,
of people saw Nine.
Mm-hmm.
So Nine was one of them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the Grindhouse series. Well, that was Weinstein Company actually. When I was at Weinstein, we worked on the Grindhouse, which was Planet Terror, the Robert Rodriguez movie, and then I'm going to need some help on this. Grindhouse was Planet Terror and Death Proof. Death Proof, which is my favorite of the two. So Grindhouse movies we're skipping ahead now to once, but Grindhouse was like the term for those like 70s movie theaters where they just had these like motorcycle movies and kind of like just real schlock stuff. But there's real talent in some of it. So Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez wanted to do a grindhouse type of thing. So they each made a movie that was released as two movies as one. So you buy a ticket, you see both movies with a little intermission in between, which is how they used to do it back in the 70s and stuff. So
oh.
yeah, so and then at Weinstein we also worked on Nanny Diary. And now at Weinstein I did something different. I did product or brand integration. So brand integration was like it's kind of like product placement, but you augment it to kind of make it more of a 360 approach. So you'll have a company come in, let's say Moet would came in for like the Sex and the City movie. That wasn't our movie, but this is a good example. So in the movie for the Sex and the City movie, you might see Carrie pouring, a bottle of champagne, of Moet champagne, and then you'll see, a month before the movie comes out, there'll be a big billboard, and it was a bottle of champagne on its side and going into this giant champagne glass, and Carrie Bradshaw is sitting in the glass, and it says, it'll have the brand name on the champagne, but then it'll say, watch Sex and the City in theaters whenever it was coming out, the release date. And that's something
Yeah.
that Moet is now paying for. So the studio doesn't have to pay for that marketing, the brand does. So they pay to be in the movie or the TV show, and then they pay to do marketing surrounded as well. Another one was Project Runway. Project Runway was our biggest project that we worked on in that department at Weinstein, because you had L'Oreal, for instance, was the show partner. They were in every episode. You had the L'Oreal makeup room, so the L'Oreal would get branding every episode.
Yep.
And then they would do marketing as well for us and promotion for the show. But then you'd have individual show partners like Hershey's. Hershey's was the blast. So we get to work with Hershey's, and Hershey's basically said, okay, we'll have the contestants go to the Hershey store that used to be in Times Square, and they'll go in super early in the morning before the customers get in there, and they'll just grab up as much inventory as they can, and then they'll go back to the workroom and they'll make skirts out of Twizzlers, or they'll make a blazer and the lining will be uncut Hershey Kiss tassels. That
Ooh,
little
cool.
it was a very cool episode.
I've seen that episode. I've
It's a
actually
great
seen
episode.
I have
Yeah.
seen that episode, and I've seen every single episode of every single season of
Wow.
Project Runway there is. So
There you go.
that was that was a pandemic indulgence for me.
Okay,
I
yeah.
binged that one. I loved it. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing about the Hershey's was that, like, I guess because we were controlling the relationship with the brand, so all those things would come back to our office. So we would get the wardrobe for a lot of these things that the contestants would make before it would go on air. So one closet had all the Hershey stuff in it. So when you'd walk by, it's food. So after a while, it's perishable. So that closet started to stink. I mean, every time you walk by, it's like, or they're like, "Oh, I need you to pull the Twizzler thing to take a photo to send it." And I was like, "Oh, do I have to?" You mask up and you go, and they're like,
Ah,
That's
yeah.
pretty funny.
Fashion can stink sometimes.
So then at one point later in your career, you decide, like, I've learned enough here. I'm kind of want to go off on my own, do my own thing.
So basically, Weinstein, they had really good movies, but some of them were just hard to sell. So I kind of looked and said, I love this whole idea of this integration. I love looking at a script and breaking it down and see where can we fit in a brand organically, so it doesn't reek of product placement. How can we do
Yeah.
this organically? And then, what's the Venn diagram between their audience and our audience, and where does it cross over? And do we have enough of an audience in between that this is good for both sides? And I found that I could do this. If I can do this for Weinstein, I can probably do it for Disney and Warner Brothers, and so I branched out on my own, and I was doing that for a little while. I ended up working with Kevin Smith for a lot of his brand stuff, and then eventually got Apple TV and discovered the documentary. And I just did a whole kind of shift in the company, and my company Patchwork Media became, instead of a brand company, it became a documentary company. Really, overnight. I kind of just said, I was so into the Back to the Future stuff that
Yeah.
I really wanted to focus on that. And so I kind of wrapped up anything else I was doing with any other brand clients, and then just moved full into documentary. And then while I was doing Back to the Future, the Ghostbusters stuff started up. So this really started picking up steam and kind of developed into a little niche market. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these, that 30-year mark was coming up for a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows. And the audience was getting to that point where they were getting into their late 30s, early 40s, and they had this feeling that they wanted to look back and they wanted to relive some of those 80s and 90s movies. And, it was movies like Back to the Future, like Ghostbusters. People always talk about the Goonies or the Burbs, the Tom Hanks movie. It's a cult one, but people love it. There's a lot of these out there, and you see a lot of even like a Rick and Morty will do tons of callbacks, or the Goldbergs that was on ABC. Every episode had something to do with the 80s nostalgia. It took place back then. And so the creator, Adam F. Goldberg, he would join on a lot of our projects because he was, he was the guy who was showcasing all this nostalgia. And so it was great. And Adam has been a true partner because he's been able to sometimes, I mean, we were indie guys and Adam had this show on ABC. So Adam was able to kind of knock on those doors or kick down those doors that we couldn't open to get to certain cast or crew or things like that.
So Adam Goldberg, is that who you said?
Adam F. Goldberg. There's two Adam Goldbergs.
Okay,
Adam Goldberg is the actor who was in like Saving Private Ryan. He was in Friends, the guy with the mannequin and the chip. He was Joey's weird roommate. So there's that guy. And then there's Adam F. Goldberg. And they make a little running joke in the Goldbergs about this. But Adam F. Goldberg, he has to use the F because of, I guess, union rules, or I don't know. But Adam has been just terrific. He's really just been great, and has helped me and a lot of the people, in this nostalgia universe kind of move forward.
So Lee, I've got a quick question for you. And this is about really kind of like, what are your factors to decide if you're going to greenlight a project and go forward working on something, or if the project doesn't fit for you and Patchwork Media?
Sure.
Like, what are some of the factors there?
Sure. Yeah. I've got to be genuinely interested in the project. Back to the Future was a no-brainer. Ghostbusters was a no-brainer. I worked on the Nickelodeon documentary, for instance. I grew up, I didn't have Nickelodeon we didn't have cable where I lived. So I knew about Double Dare. I knew about You Can't Do That on Television. I knew about Slime. But I've never
those
gone
are
to Nickelodeon.
Huge. I've seen the Nickelodeon documentary, and I've seen, I think, most of your work, actually. I mean, we're friends, but these are fun, documentaries to watch anyway. Because if you're a kid that grew up in 90s, 80s, you're gonna go, oh my God, I remember that show. The Nickelodeon stuff was classic. It brought up so many memories. And I was joking with my siblings too, because we all would watch that. And Double Dare, that was huge. It was like a double dare, anyway, super fun show.
No, it's great. And Mark, and I've gotten to know Mark Summers, who is a great guy.
So fun.
A great guy.
Yeah.
And he's doing a new Hanukkah movie, I think, for Hallmark. So check that out. But I didn't know anything about Nickelodeon. So for that one, I was like, do I want to invest the time in this? Am I going to bring value to this? Because I don't really know enough about the behind. I don't know. Forget the behind the scenes. I don't know
Yeah.
what was going on in front of the camera because I didn't see. I mean, I watched a lot on YouTube and I caught up and I bought like the whole season of Hey Dude and watched that.
Yeah.
And
Classic show. Another classic show. Okay, yeah.
well, I wanted to make sure that when we're going to be interviewing people, that I
Yeah.
kind of knew, because the director was based in Texas. They were
Mhm.
going out to LA. They were occasionally coming to New York, but they couldn't always come to New York. We didn't have the budget for it. And if there was an actor in New York, like the Pete's from Pete and Pete,
Mhm.
we were able to
Mhm.
interview them in New York, but the director couldn't make it up. So I just said, okay, well, send me your questions. But I wanted to, so I watched a little bit of Pete and Pete and just make sure
Yeah.
I had some questions to ask just in case we wanted to make it a little more conversational than just reading question after question. So that was exciting because I wanted to learn more about the
Yes.
project and learn more about Nickelodeon. But, if it's something that I really have no connection to, you're going to be
Yes.
spending a lot of time on these subjects. And,
Yes.
if it's something or it's something that I know about that I didn't like, it was a movie I didn't like, well, then it's like, well, I don't want to spend the next year of my life or 2 years, depending, living in this world, living in something like Back to the Future or The House from was great because it's all these different things that you remember from your childhood. You have some level of passion for, and you want to live in that universe. I mean, it's whenever, and some of it's tedious, like the house from, or rather every documentary you do, there's a lot of granular work, and you have to, when you get a distributor, you have to put together something for your insurance company. Otherwise, if you don't get insurance, the distributor is not going to release your movie. And it's called E&O insurance, errors and omission insurance. And what it is you have to protect yourself from being sued by a studio for using their clips, or somebody has said something that maybe they don't want out there, or so do we have a release for them, or are they okay with that? And you get in touch with them, and or you edit around that, and then like one of the things with clips, for instance, we don't really pay for the clips because if we had to pay for clips, we couldn't make any of these movies because that would be just an astronomical price. So what you do is you use something called fair use. The fair use doctrine basically says if you talk about something, Back to the Future is a good example. If Robert Zemeckis is talking about shooting the hoverboard scene when Marty has to go over the water, right?
Yes.
We can then cut to a clip of him, about 2.5 seconds of him attempting to go over the water in the hoverboard. And then we can cut back to Bob Zemeckis.
Okay. So that
we
the
now don't
audience
have
has
to
a
pay for that.
reference. Okay.
It's like news. So we don't have to pay for that because it's called transformative. It's a transformative work. We're not trying to say that we're the creators of Back to the Future 2. We're just trying to exhibit something that the subject is talking about, so the audience has a visual. So you have to put together this spreadsheet, and it's incredibly tedious, and your eyes just start to bleed because it's just line after, especially The House From, which is so many different movies. So you have to figure out who owns the copyright and all these different columns. It's so boring. I'm sorry if I'm putting the audience to sleep here. It's so boring. But my point is, you're going to spend this much time with if you're going to spend this much time with and doing this tedious little work, you better love the project.
Now, because you're specifically talking about a lot of these docs that you've worked on that are like fan docs, more or less, right? But what about some of the documentaries you've worked on that are not really based on a television show or a movie, like Be a Man, where it was focused on a comedian and his own journey becoming a father, and then kind of all of that stuff, or Waldo on Weed. When you're working on these documentaries that aren't spin-offs from a TV show, like, tell us about that. Like, what made you want to be involved with those two projects? And then how is that different from the needs that these other projects have, right? Obviously the licensing is going to be different. because you're not licensing a film for Be a Man or for Waldo on Weed.
Right, that spreadsheet gets a little easier for those
Yeah.
movies. So Be a Man, we were screening back in time at the somewhere north of Boston Film Festival, the Snob Film Festival. Um, it's in is it Concord, New Hampshire? It's somewhere in New Hampshire, and
Mhm.
it's a wonderful festival. And I went up there in the fall of 2015, I guess it was, and Be a Man was screening as well. So we had done our screening for Back in Time, and but I'd seen this and I was like, I mean, I love comedians. I grew up sneaking into Catch a Rising Star on the Upper East Side, when I was way too young to be there. And so
Mhm.
I wanted to see this movie,
Mhm.
and the comedian and his partner. The comedian was Ray Harrington, and then Derek Furtado was his partner in it. So Ray and Derek are both comedians, and they both kind of did 5 minutes before the movie started. And I mean, they killed. It was great. Then they do this fantastic. Then we see this movie, and it's amazing. And
Mhm.
I remember I went to go to the bathroom in the middle of the movie, and Ray was standing in the back of the theater. And I walked up to him and I said, "My name is Lee Leshen. I'm the producer of the Back to the Future documentary. Ray is a huge Back to the Future fan. In fact, coincidentally, we both went to the same farm in Massachusetts for our respective documentaries to interview the Shea family, because Bill Shea owns the actual Back to the Future Part 3 car with the white wall
Mhm.
tires and the one that was on the train tracks.
Yep.
Um, he owns the screen used one, as well as like a perfect replica of the first of the A car from the first one.
Yep.
Um,
The
and
DeLorean.
the DeLorean, yeah, sorry, the
DeLorean.
time
Yep.
machines. So we had to go up there definitely. And Ray was doing a thing about, the whole idea of Be a Man is, what is it like to be a man? What is it like? He was having his first child. It was going to be a son. Ray grew up without a dad. So he wanted to kind of learn what it's like to be a man so he can teach his kid the things that the kid's going to need to know. How to drive a sports car, how to drink like a man, how to fight like a man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hilarious.
It's a
And
it's a
he
fun documentary for sure. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was laughing from start to finish. I love this documentary. And so I said to Ray when I was just going to the bathroom, I said, listen, we got to talk after this. We had gotten distribution for Back in Time. I said, I want to help you get distribution for this. This needs to be seen. You need to be seen, because Ray is a completely underrated comic. I put him up against Seinfeld. I put him up against any of the greats. I mean,
Mhm.
he's that good, and he needs to be famous. But he after the screening, we ended up talking in the lobby, and I ended up joining after the movie was finished as a producer to help get distribution. We ended up getting on Hulu for 3 years. I think it was on Hulu, and it was great. So people got to see it, and then so I got involved in something like that because at that point, I already just, the movie was done. So it was something I could see
Yeah.
and already fall in love with. Waldo on Weed was something
Yeah.
that we didn't have anything. All we had with that was the director, Tommy Avalone, the same guy who did The House From. He sent me all this found footage. What it was so Waldo's father, Brian, was given a flip cam. This is before iPhones. So
Mhm.
he was given a flip cam to kind of record his kid's first steps, his first words, things like that. Um,
Mhm.
and so they get all that footage, but then one day, I forget if it was Brian or his wife says, "Does his eye look a little funny?" And then again, this is all on a flip cam. And then they take him to the hospital, and they take him to the Children's Hospital, CHOP, the Children's Hospital of
Yep.
Philadelphia,
Mhm.
and they go in there, and the doctor's saying, I'm a little concerned about the eye, and then you get the diagnosis, and you get the diagnosis on camera, and it was retinoblastoma, so it was eye cancer. This is a baby. I
Yeah.
don't think he was 6 months old, Waldo,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so Tommy had put together what's called a sizzle reel, which is kind
Yeah.
of like a trailer, and it's just like it was this found footage and like clips from I think one interview that he had done with Brian, and there would be more to follow. But he showed me the sizzle, and I said, how can I not be involved in this story? Because ultimately, what they realized was, and again, all of this is not only in the documentary, but it was on this flip cam of Brian going. And this is 2014, so CBD oil isn't legal. THC oil certainly wasn't legal. Um, and they end up going to California, getting a medical ID, getting the weed, shipping it back, in a fake birthday. They basically made up a fake birthday party for a kid. And, like they bought a pinata and they stuffed the weed in the pinata. And because they had to get the right type. They went to a medical marijuana person. They told them what to use. They told them exactly what was happening. The weed was then shipped back. And by the time Brian got home, when we flew home, he said he walked in to the house and he heard laughter. He heard a baby laughing. And, we know what chemo does to adults, and it just tears us up inside.
Mm-hmm.
A baby, it just destroys them. So they have to be on all sorts of medications for the side effects, like the certainly the nausea, the vomiting, the oil, the marijuana oil the marijuana was kind of reduced down into an oil, and they would put just like a literally just like a pinprick on a pinky, rub it on Waldo's gums, and all the pain went away. And Waldo could sit there, take that chemo like it was a vitamin C pill. I mean, and then they would go for checkups, and they stopped all the side effect medication. They kept the chemo, but all the other medication to prevent the side effects, they just ceased all that stuff. And they would be in the waiting room. And Brian would say, I'm sitting in the waiting room with my kid who's just, he's playing, or he's looking at a coloring book or something. But he's not upset. He's not in any pain. And all the other kids in the waiting room, they're crying. They're in agony. And, and Brian's saying, in my bag, I have the solution, but I can't tell anybody in this waiting room about it, because if I do, I'm going to go to jail. So, and then he goes into the doctor's office for a checkup, and the doctors are looking at him, they're looking at his numbers, and they're saying, whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. And this is all on video, because he would have the flip cam running. And it was just remarkable. And Waldo's, we were able to get that into Tribeca at the Tribeca Film Festival. And Waldo and his dad and the family came in for that. And it was great because, to watch them watching the movie was amazing. And we got to spend some time.
Was that the first time they saw the film? Was that Tribeca?
That was the first time I think that they saw the final film. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And on that film, you had Whoopi Goldberg as a producer as well, right?
Whoopi was, she was our executive producer of that. It was, she was great. And her producing partner, Tom Leonardis, were fantastic. And they opened some doors for us, which was great. And Whoopi ended up, she was gracious enough to come and do the Q&A at Tribeca and moderate a panel. And we had, it was a great time. Unfortunately, the movie never really took off because we released it on March 17th, 2020, when the world shut their doors.
I knew exactly you were going to say that. That's too bad, because honestly, you just had, that's a gripping story. You just had us fully pulled in right there as you're telling us that story.
Yeah.
I can understand. So it's like there's an emotional aspect. These sort of stories have to kind of take you over in order for you to want to work on them in some way. And that is...
Yeah, I forgot the question. Yes, you're right. That's what made me join onto that one. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I can see why. And
yeah, definitely.
You brought up the house from, so maybe it's a good time to sort of transition into that. Between like these sort of emotionally gripping stories and then all the nostalgia, like it's really, you can see how you feel like you have a stake in the story itself, because these nostalgic movies that some of these houses are in are part of our childhood memories. And
Yeah, the collective conscious.
yeah, and the collective conscious, like even like I'm going to be honest, like even as you're telling me that you've done these documentaries talking about like Pete and Pete and Double Dare and all this stuff, it's like I feel like I'm taking it personally. Like, wait, there's like other people who like find this as important. Like Back to the Future was like that was a thing I did with my dad. We were two daughters. My father had two daughters, and like I was probably more of the tomboy, and that is the thing we bonded over. Like was Back to the Future, and I mean the whole when the all every single one, two, and three came out. We saw them all in the theaters. So, yeah. So,
Well, it's funny.
anyways,
Well, it's funny you bring up your dad. So my parents were divorced, and my dad. We lived on Long Island. My dad lived in the city, and we would either go to see him every other weekend, or he would come out to see us. And when we were kids, he was in his 30s. So I mean, I don't know that he really knew what to talk to us about, and it was also the heyday of these movies, the 80s and 90s. And so he would say, okay, we weren't particularly religious, so every Saturday or Sunday our sanctuary was a movie theater, and we
yeah.
would go and we would go and see Back to the Future. I don't remember seeing Back to the Future one in the theater. I was 7. Maybe I saw it in the theater, but I remember the exact theater that I saw it in, for part 2. And I remember walking out and getting into the car and just kind of saying, he was explaining time travel to me in a sense that I can understand. He was like, okay, let's say you're on one end of a football field and I'm on the other end of the football field, and I go like this with my hand. You're going to see me move my hand a split second after it happened. So that's the only real time travel. And I was just kind of like, yeah, because all I was thinking, well, what lives in between this and this? What lives in between that little split second? And that's where the magic of Back to the Future is. But I mean, I just remember going, and I remember the lights going down. I remember the sticky floors. I remember, the popcorn and all that stuff, and really just feeling that for the next 2 hours, everything else doesn't matter. And this is,
Yeah.
this is where you're supposed to be. And now I always say, when you have a ticket to a movie or a concert, it's a rare occasion in your life when you're in exactly the place that you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be in this theater, in this seat, and it kind of just allows you to let go of everything else and just be absorbed into the experience because you're in seat row this or seat number, row F, seat 4. That's the ticket I bought for, and that's scheduled for this. So I mean, any other time you can say, well, I could be doing something else. And yes, you could be doing something else besides going to a movie, but you've made that decision, you've committed to it, and it kind of allows you just to relax.
I was just gonna say that's super poetic, the idea that like it's rare in your life that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, or you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And
Yeah. And where you
unless
want to be.
yeah,
Hopefully.
I love
Yeah.
that. And also just that like these movies and art in general and music, I mean, it is what bridges those big gaps of emotional sort of awkwardness sometimes between two people. Like, sometimes
Parents and sons or
parent, yeah, or
totally.
first dates, I mean, it
Yeah.
connects people um to share in some, a piece of the same
Yeah.
thing that they
A
hold
shared
nostalgia.
experience.
Yeah, or a shared nostalgia over something. So that's really cool. But why don't we transition into The House From?
Yeah.
The House From is a documentary directed by Tommy Avalone that explores the lives of individuals who own homes made famous by their appearances in movies and TV shows. So the film delves into how these homeowners interact with fans, handle unexpected fame, and manage the impact of widespread nostalgia on their personal spaces. I read it off because I felt like it said it sort of perfectly. But yeah, so sort of my first impression of this movie was like I mean, I couldn't believe some of the same houses were used in the same TV shows over and over and over again. You
Oh
don't
yeah.
you don't think about that. And I would also say that just sort of opening, there's Ethan Embry in sort of one of the first scenes talking about the house that Can't Hardly Wait was made in. And not only did I love Can't Hardly Wait, but I loved Ethan Embry. And then Jason Lee was doing the
Yeah.
voiceover, and I loved Jason Lee. So I was like, you had me like right away. I was like, this is so dope. But anyways, so I'll let you take over. Tell us a little bit about what made you want to work on the house from.
Well, this is one that Tommy had been working on, and then I came in a little after halfway through, and he had already had tremendous stuff. Um, and I mean, I've had a love for locations. I mean, I live in New York City, so it's the biggest backlot in the world. You know, you can walk. I mean, I love walking down the streets and going, "Oh yeah, that was using this or that was using." I mean, down the street is the Sex and the City townhouse. Um, a few blocks south of that is the Cosby Show townhouse, and there's a movie called Lucky Number 11 that was one that I worked on at Miramax actually, and that was Ben Kingsley, Morgan Freeman, I think, and they live in these two buildings, and they're supposed to be like two billionaires or something like that, and they look at each other, through the windows across the street, and those two buildings are just up the street over here. So
Wow.
every time I'm walking around, I was at a dinner a couple of years ago, and there's this diner nearby that has had $6 worth of renovations since they opened in 1922, and it still looks like it still looks like that. So they were using it for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So I was watching the episode of Maisel. I said, "Oh, that's the guy." So I've always had a thing for movie locations and for film and television tourism. Whenever I'm in a place that's not New York, if there's something that was filmed there, I'm gonna probably know about. I was just in England a few months ago and was walking around this area called Hampstead, and I don't know if you've seen the Three Body Problem, but on Netflix.
A
But
little bit.
so like I think the opening or the first episode, there's a pivotal scene that happens on these stairs. And I was walking by with my buddy and my girlfriend, and we walked by, and he says, "Do you watch the Three Body?" And we just started watching. So that's the stairs where the cigarette is lit, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I just love that stuff. So when Tommy said, "Hey, can you help out on this movie?" I mean, it was a no-brainer. This was one that I just loved every second, even the spreadsheets. Tommy and I split the work on the spreadsheets. We did it, real indie style, and we both took the 50% of the work on that, and and we both were commiserating how much we hated it. And we had to do it a couple of times because if you change something, everything is, again, this is minutia, but everything is time coded, to like
Oh,
the 3 decimal points or something. So if you say, okay, we can't use this clip, or we have to shorten that, the lawyer says we have to shorten that clip. Well, now everything else is just, so now we got to rejigger everything else. I'm sure there's a way to do this with AI that we haven't figured out yet. But right now, it's tedious. But it was, the house frame is probably, it's one of the most fun that I've worked on, I would say. And I mean, I think it's a trip from start to finish. And yeah, I mean, when it hit number one on Apple TV documentaries, we were just like, I mean, it was to say that we had the number one movie, amazing, and we're so happy that it's out and that people are watching, that people are enjoying it. We're getting, messages from people saying, thanks for making this. This is my childhood in, a 90-minute movie. It's great. It's great. We got things like that for Ghostheads, the Ghostbusters one as well, because one of the fans one of the Ghostbusters that we cover in the movie dealt with addiction using Ghostbusters to get her clean. And she would just watch
wow.
Ghostbusters, and she immersed herself in the Ghostbusters life and the ethos, and doing good for
Wow.
others and things like that. So we would get letters from people saying, "I'm an addict," and or "I'm in recovery,
Whoa.
and
Yeah.
this movie is helping me, and I'm gonna become a Ghostbuster." and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go to the children's house, and I'm going to do something productive to make other people happy
Wow.
using this. And
Yeah.
it's something we didn't expect. This was just kind of a look back at the movie and the legacy that it had. We did not think that it was going to have that much of an impact. So it's nice.
So with the house from, you came on mid-project. What was that like coming on? Like they had already done a bunch of stuff. Where did you jump in?
I jumped in. We were still shooting, but a lot of the main stuff had already been done. But we didn't have guys like Jason Lee in yet. Uh, you know, um, and it was a fun thing to come into, even though I wasn't there from the beginning,
Mhm.
because I just love the idea of locations so much. Because locations, especially like this, I mean, you can walk. I mean, the Sex and the City house always has people outside, morning, noon, and
Always.
night, 24/7. You go there on Christmas, you go on Thanksgiving, there will be people outside. And the other day, I was walking to an appointment, and it was on the same street, and I walked by, and there were people taking pictures, and I just, it's the way that these buildings, that these locations make people feel.
Yeah.
That's important. And when I would go by, Tommy would ask me, can you go by to the Sex and the City house? Can you go by the friend's house is also nearby the exterior. Um, and just, take your camera and, flip it horizontally and shoot 4K, and just, we need some B-roll. And I'd shoot some B-roll over there. And it was great, especially on the weekend. You see all these people outside. But we were all having a shared experience, basically. That's what it is. There's very few shared experiences now, because we're not all going to the movie on opening night. We're not all sitting down to watch the premiere of a new show or the season finale, because everything is streaming and it's really more on demand stuff now than appointment television. We don't really have that anymore. I mean, maybe the Oscars, but nobody's really watching that anymore. The Super Bowl, I guess, is the last thing that I can really think of that brings in an audience like that, where um, you know, people are watching it either for the football, or they're watching it for the commercials, or they're watching it because there's a party going on, and everybody wants to get together for it. But outside of that, you're not having these shared experiences anymore. So if you go to the Home Alone house in Winnetka, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, and you go there with your spouse or a friend, and you pull up, and there's 30 other people out there, and they're all going, or you go to the
Yeah.
Goonies house, and there's 30 people
He
doing the
just did
truffle
the
shuffle.
Home Alone Macaulay Culkin hands on the side of the cheek face.
Oh, I'll give you audio.
Yeah,
So,
Got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh, that's a YouTube short right there. Anyway, so no, but or you go to the Goonies house and you see everybody doing the truffle shuffle, things like that, and everybody's it's like the Ghostbusters. Everybody, you have a common thing, and it brings people together. So, of course, I want to be involved in a movie like that when it has so many different groups of fans that can all relate to each other because of these one common motivations, being these movies and these television shows.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have to tell this story.
Oh, okay, let's hear it.
Okay. So the night before I watched The House From, I was watching one of my late night episodes of Body Cam, the cop. Do you know what that is? Body Cam is the cops. It is the cops show where it shows stuff that was caught
on the body cam.
On the body cam.
Okay.
Listen.
Emmy, can I just interrupt? Wait, just when I think of Emmy and Erin of Guns and Hoses, here's what I want to imagine. I want to imagine on any night of the week, the two of you are up to some crazy shit. Okay. The most disappointing thing right now is I'm looking at Erin's Norman Rockwell background, which is beautiful. And everybody's talking about body care. You two need to get out more. This rock star stuff is a sham. A sham. All right, go on about your YouTube.
I'll tell you that like my sister's like, doesn't that give you anxiety? And I'm like, it's soothing. It reminds me of the chaos that is normally my life. I feel right at home all no. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I was watching, I don't know. Somehow I get sucked into this stuff because you know what? I like watching people do shocking things. Like I'm like, what are they doing? They're crazy. I like just like judging the people on the on cops. But anyways, okay. So this is like some sort of special spin-off series from the regular body cam. This is like unbelievable body cam capture, kind of like 2.0. Okay, so I'm getting to the reason I'm bringing this up. So the night before I watch The House From, there is an episode. So the cops are called to the Goonies house. Some neighbor has seen some hooligan leaving something on the porch and they're calling it vandalism. So the cops get there and a guy like in a creepy mask or beanie or something like that has left a big dead fish on the porch. Do you know this story?
I mean, I know where you're going with it, but keep going.
You know where I'm going with this?
Go ahead.
I have no
Okay.
idea where you're going with this.
So they don't catch him, right? So the next day, they just completely separately, there's like a huge storm, right? In where was it? Where is it again?
It's in Astoria, Oregon. It rains a lot there.
Astoria, Oregon.
Yeah.
And there's this boat out on the water when this huge storm's happening and it's getting so bad, the waves are getting so big and it's getting so crazy that they could see that this boat's going to capsize, and so they have to call out the like rescue crew to catch, and they realize it's this couple's boat but the couple's on land, and so someone has stolen this couple's boat and it's out in the sea and it's about to capsize, and rescue has to go out, but before rescue can get the guy off the boat, this huge wave comes and capsizes and knocks this huge boat over. Anyways, long story short, the rescue ends up getting him out. They pull him by like the crazy little ladder. They're fishing him out of the water. And as he's walking on, out from the, like on the news from the rescue helicopter, somebody recognizes him as the guy who has left the fish on the Goonies house porch. And this all happens the day before I watched The House From. What is the likelihood?
Okay, so this brings up a really great question. Like, the Goonies house, did you see the Goonies house? Was that one of the, did you go to any of the locations? That house, I felt so bad for those people. I mean, now the guy who owns it seems like stoked, but like that.
The woman who owned it for a long time, she had to deal with. I mean, look, most of the fans that go to these places, have good intentions. I mean, I count myself as one of these fans. And you want to go, you want to take a picture, of the place. With or without you in it, you just you want to memorialize that you were there and remember that, and it gives you that nostalgia. It gives you, I mean, the doctor that we interview in the movie talks about how nostalgia literally means, translated I think from Latin, was homesick. So it gives you it takes you somewhere, it brings you somewhere when you're standing in front of these houses, or it's like when you meet a celebrity from your favorite movie or TV show. It connects you, in a way more than just your screen can. So I think that the woman living in the Goonies house and the women living in Walter White's house from Breaking Bad, they didn't. They're fine with the polite people, but the people who are rude or I mean, people are throwing pizza on the Breaking Bad house. I mean, nobody wants
Yeah, that was
perishable
hard.
items or anything. Yeah, you don't want somebody throwing. It's your house. It's your home. It's your
Yeah.
fortress. It's you know, um,
Mhm.
and you know, it's just it's not something that it's easy to deal with. The new owners of the Home Alone house, they haven't moved in yet, but they're going to have to deal with this as well. The old owners put up gates in front, so you and they got rid of the way that the driveway was configured, so they changed up a little bit. The house, it looks exactly the same, but you know, they didn't want people coming up the driveway anymore. They didn't want, you know, somebody taking a picture of the front door, you know, standing a foot away from it. As you wouldn't, nobody would. You know, people want their privacy. People want their personal space to be respected. Um, so yeah, so and but the new owner of the Goonies house, I mean, he is all in, and I believe he's renovating it now, and I can't wait to see what he does with it. Um, it's very exciting, and but you know, you also have people who really embrace it, like the people from the Twilight House who have turned their place into an, you know, they turned into an Airbnb. You can
I
Yeah.
stay
love
in
that.
Bella's room, and you know, you can walk down the same stairs. They kept the kitchen the same. They kept the stairs the same. They kept the dinette set the same. It's all the same from the movie. Yeah, I mean, the Christmas Story house. The guy saved up his money his whole life, bought the house, renovated it to look exactly like it was in the movie. Um, Started charging admission to come and see it, and made it a museum. Was able to get some of the wardrobe, original wardrobe and props. He put that in another house. I think it's the Bumpus house, the ones with the dogs that come over that the father hated. So he ends up buying that house. I think he owns 3 or 4 buildings on this little block, and like the parking lot. I mean, you know, he's turned it into something. It's a business now, and this is how he
Yeah.
supports his family, and it's through his passion. And the guy who the Buffalo Bills house from Silence of the Lambs. I mean, you can get married at Buffalo Bill's house. You can,
Great.
you know,
It's
the well
wild.
downstairs. I mean, it's crazy, but you got to love the passion. I mean, yeah, it's a fantastic movie, and it's a fantastic experience both to work on and I think for people to watch. It's a funny job. I always say to, like, when Tommy and I were doing the spreadsheets, I would say, you know what, this sucks, but at the end of the day, we could all be, you know, like working in a back office somewhere and not just making a paycheck and clocking in and clocking out and not being having at all any passion for the work that we do. And you know, the most valuable thing we have is our time and who we spend it with. And it's nice to spend this time working on these projects, and seeing the results with the audience and their reactions to it.
So, Lee, tell us about, if somebody's trying to get into the industry, what you would recommend.
I would recommend that if they're trying to get in the industry, they should try to work in a mailroom. They should try to work at an agency, because yes, agencies are powerful, but they're also always trying to get something that, you know, maybe the other person that they're talking to doesn't want to give. And so for that reason, you know, being a seller, it really teaches you how to cut your teeth in this industry. It teaches you everything about the industry. It teaches you, okay, I have a client here that the studio really wants, and they want the person for, you know, their their normal rate is $10 million a movie.
Yeah.
They only have $5 million for them. So
Yeah.
okay, if the studio is willing to pay the $5 million to them for this project, but that also comes with a guarantee that they'll distribute that actor's indie movie that they're working on.
Yes.
You know, that's their passion project, and somebody somewhere once said, you do one for them, one for you, meaning that you do one studio picture and then you can do your indie project. And you know, it's also I don't know if it's still like this, but in the old days when a studio would distribute a movie to the movie theaters, the movie theater would say, okay, we really want the Avengers movie. And so Disney can say, or Marvel, whoever owns Disney or the Avengers at the time, they can say, um, okay, well, we'll give you the Avengers, but you also have to take these other two movies when they come out, or we'll give you the trailer for the Avengers because they want the trailers, but you also have to show trailers for my other two lesser known movies. And so it's the way the studios or the agents can negotiate these deals. That's where you learn a tremendous amount, and you can go from an agency to a studio or to a production company because you know now how the sausage is made. So I would say, if mailrooms still exist, work in the mailroom, get those internships, get those assistant jobs, get on somebody's desk, meaning become an assistant on somebody's desk who's got a big client list. You will learn how the deals are negotiated at that level. And then once you learn that, you can work at any level you want after that because you've got that background. So you can like NBC Careers I think is a website. I think CBS has one.
Which totally makes sense. But just in case people don't understand, an agent reps an actor, group of actors or whatever, and they're the person who's making those deals on the actor's behalf. Correct?
Yeah, actors,
you just
writers, directors.
It's pretty like cinematic, and it's sort of a romantic story of little Lee working in the mailroom, people throwing mail at him. Yeah, kid, get this out by 5 p.m. Get this script to Julia. And then here you are with your own company, Patchwork Media, and you're making these movies. So it's the idea that you started in the mailroom is pretty classic kind of, that's like pretty cool. Like to me, when I imagine like, the people who deserve to do what they're doing at sort of the highest level, it's those people that started in the mailroom.
Yeah.
So that's
started
pretty
from
cool,
the bottom,
Lee.
now you're here.
Yeah.
Ooh, started
Yeah.
from the bottom, now you got an old media company.
That's your second YouTube short for this one. Yeah, no, I mean, working the mailroom was a blast, and they say this is an industry you have to pay your dues, but and when you're paying them, there's a lot of it you don't like, but it's so much fun looking back on it, and even being in it. A lot of times, it was fun, and then at the end of the day, you all leave the mailroom or you leave the assistant desk, and and you all go to the bar and you all commiserate there, or you go to somebody's birthday party, or something like that, or you go on a trip together. There is this camaraderie that happens when you're in the trenches, and it happens in the mailrooms and as interns and as assistants. And there's a phrase in the business, and it's called "look down, you're kissing the wrong ass," because you become the gatekeepers for for the talent, for these directors, for the studios at low levels, and it gives you this it gives you a sense of purpose, and that you really do feel like you're contributing to, whether it's the actor that your agent is working for or the studio that's making the movie that you're doing this tiny little small piece on. But look at the credits of movies and TV shows. There's all these people you've never heard of, and all those people love the business. They might not love their particular job they're doing, but they love the business, and we're all truly passionate about this. Otherwise, we would be doing something else, because they're all tough jobs.
Would you ever want to do a music documentary? And if so, what would you want to do? Who? Or
I mean, the Hotcakes, obviously. I mean,
the Hotcakes was our band. That was Lee and I were in a band together. That's what he was talking about. Our band. Yeah.
Paint the town red.
Paint
baby.
the town.
I mean, listen. I mean, we'll do a short doc about the Cincinnati Reds. And, we'll just have that.
Yeah.
But would I ever want to? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's it's funny. There's this there's I mean, it's funny because with music, you can do a look back at a
Hmm.
career, but a
Hmm.
lot of these musicians and bands are still playing. So, if somebody was going to do um, a Metallica documentary, right, which I think there already
Hmm.
is, but I mean, if they were
Yep.
going to do one
Hmm.
that was a retrospective, you'd have to still include, and by the way, they're playing the Garden tomorrow or something, so. Um, but I think there are maybe some smaller bands that might be fun to do. Um, my girlfriend is very into jam bands, which I was never really into,
Hmm.
and so we've got to know a little bit. I've got to know a little more about the Grateful Dead and Fish and bands like that. And like, there's this. It's a tribute band. I guess you'd call it that. Called JRAD, and Joe Russo's almost dead. That's what the JRAD stands. So they're almost dead. And Joe Russo's a drummer, and he's like they call me Octopus because he's just this amazing drummer. So I mean, you watch them, and it's like they rip the seams off the Grateful Dead, and then they put some rock into it, and they really it just explodes. And these guys are selling out really nicely sized venues, and they've got
Yeah.
big followings. And I saw them once, and Bob Weir from the Dead came out and played with them. And so
Yeah.
they're legitimate. They're not like
Yeah.
you know. So I look at that and say, there could be an angle with a band like JRAD where it's interesting because they are playing the music of such a legendary band. So then where do all those legions of fans go? The ones who
Right.
follow the Dead, the ones who go, where do they go? Well, they
Right.
go to
So
JRAD, they
you're
go to other,
yeah. So you're saying you're going to do a Guns N' Roses documentary next
Right,
then?
right,
I mean,
Joking.
I think Guns N' Roses is the next on the list. Um, I mean, when is your next show, by the way?
Well, we just played this weekend. We opened for the Hold Steady. It was sold out. It was
Oh, that's
awesome.
right.
So
Oh,
right.
fun. Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was super, super fun. But we're working on a future show for the spring. We'll definitely keep you posted. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was just listening to, so we created a Spotify playlist for the house from, and it's
mhm.
got like all the theme songs from the TV shows, and it's got some of the music from some of the movies, and one of the I forgot about this, but from old school there was
Mhm.
the Dan Band, and they're the ones who sing at the wedding, and they do "Total Eclipse of the Heart," and they completely change up the lyrics. And
Oh,
and I was like, I wonder what they're up to, and they're playing Le Poisson Rouge on December 20th, and I was like, look at this. I mean,
whoa.
Oh, Le Poisson
yeah, yeah.
Rouge.
I was like, this is great. I'm seeing George Porter that night, so I can't go. But it was like,
Yeah.
this is great. They're like, I'm really happy about that. We should talk about a little bit of music, I guess, on the
Yeah,
on the
that's
vinyl
it.
Yeah,
play.
yeah.
You took care of it for us. We always have a music
Yeah,
segment, but you just took care of our music segment for us. So thanks.
totally. We're gonna wrap, I think, the interview, but we
Okay.
only want to finish. We end with a game. Emmy, tell them what that game is.
We are going to be playing Buy, Sell, Trade with you. It is a game much
Buy,
like
sell, trade.
Marry F Kill. So tell us,
Mhm.
Lee, which houses in the house from would you buy, sell, and trade?
We got to give them three choices.
I'm writing this
Here's
down.
your choices. Full
Okay.
house. The Full House. Okay.
Okay.
The Goonies house.
Okay.
The Halloween house.
Okay. Okay.
The
Okay.
Mike Myers
Okay.
house.
Okay. I think I am buying the Full House house
Okay.
because the kitchen is ridiculous.
Pretty sweet. Yeah.
The kitchen was out. I mean, it was amazing. I think Jeff Franklin did that. Jeff Franklin was the guy who created Full House and Fuller House, and he ended up buying the house. And I think he put that kitchen in. I'm not. It's. I would do that just for the kitchen. So that's buy. Sell. Is buy, sell, or trade? Was
Yeah.
it?
Buy, sell, trade.
Okay.
Just like a record store.
I would sell the Goonies house
Ooh.
just because it rains a lot where they are in Astoria, Oregon. It rains a lot.
Hmm.
And so I don't know that I'd love that. And I think the roof leaks a lot. So I would sell
Mm.
the Goonies house,
Hmm.
and I guess I would trade the Halloween house, but I'd be more interested. I'd trade the Halloween house for the Home Alone house. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, listen, I would the Home Alone house, I think, is the easy favorite, but
Yeah.
the Rubio house also. The Rubio house is the one that was used in Can't Hardly Wait, and it was used in American Pie, and it was used in
Yeah.
This Is Us, and it's been used in like 100 things. The
Yeah.
Rubio house is really cool because it kind of feels like you can transform it into all these different types of things, and I think it's got a lot of land. Um,
Yeah.
but
You're
oh,
really coming at this from like a real estate perspective. I mean,
I
I have to
really
say
am.
this is the first time we're doing buy sell trade with like properties, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's like characters in the film were like, buy sell trade these different characters, and then this is like actual properties. It feels like we're playing
Yeah.
Monopoly. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. We did a promotion when the movie came out with Zillow Gone Wild. If you have not followed this Instagram account, follow it immediately.
I
yes,
I
have.
mean, this guy
yes,
is brilliant. He will find a castle in Texas or something
yeah,
like that, and they're usually all for sale. And so it's great promotion for the houses, but it was he finds the most unique places. Um, and he was all jazzed to come on board with us. And that was, I mean, listen, it is our executive producer is Ryan Reynolds, so it's like I think he is it's attractive.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's
Who's
still
that? No, I've
you're right. He's this up and coming Canadian actor.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I think
Yeah,
he's going
no.
to do okay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I should say the house film is available on Maximum Effort as well, which is Ryan's channel on Fubo TV, which is why he's the EP. But yeah, I think that's good. I feel like I'm gonna be sitting later and just be like, ooh, what about the? And I'm looking at I've got the DVD here just because I wanted to remind myself, like, yeah, I mean, I can easily see. But there's also Bushnell Avenue in California, and that's got the old school house, which is also
Yeah.
the house that Biff throws in Back to the Future 2, I think. He throws the ball on the roof or the balcony over there. And
Yep.
that's got George McFly's house. So just to live on that street, it's such like an Anytown, USA. I bet the trick or treating is just outstanding there. And
Ah,
that's usually how I judge a neighborhood is by the trick or
yeah.
treating. You know?
How much
Yeah.
candy can people pull from this area? Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
because where I
That's
grew
good.
up, I mean, we didn't have cable. The houses were spread far apart, and there was no sidewalk, so we didn't really have much of a trick or treating atmosphere. So we would always go to like the next neighborhood over, where
Yeah.
there were sidewalks and there were like houses right next to it. So you would just go with like a bag, and
Yeah.
you would have a back problem afterwards because it was just so heavy with just one piece of candy from each house. But you just go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
And so now I judge neighborhoods and where I would want to live by how the trick or treating is.
Oh, I
That
love
seems
that.
that seems
It's
really
cute.
rational and really it makes a lot. I mean, it feels like that's like based in really, really smart data and
I think so. I think so. Don't check
Oh,
Zillow,
man.
check Hershey sales and where they
Yeah.
spike around
No,
Halloween.
Love
That's where you want to
that.
live.
That's good. Smart. I love it. Good place to end, I think.
We would love to talk to you again when you have your next project, out
Sure.
and about and can talk about it. We'd love to, watch it and talk about it. And everybody, audience, listeners, thank you so much. You can follow Lee. Lee, where should they follow you? Or how should people, if they want to learn about new projects you're working on, what should they do?
Yeah, I guess Instagram. I think it's just at Lee Leshen.
We'll tag Lee on social media. And thank you to Lee. Thank you to Emmy. Thank you to me for all of us being here.
We look forward to seeing what's coming up for out of Patchwork Media and what exciting projects you do next. And We just want to thank you for listening to the Video and Vital Club. And please follow us on Instagram at Video and Vital Club. We are on TikTok as well. And please leave us a 5-star review wherever you are listening to your podcasts.
Yes, we're now available on Spotify, iTunes podcasts, iHeartRadio, and many other platforms. We're on Amazon Music too. So see you next time, everybody, or
Thanks,
listen to you next time.
Lee. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you, Erin. Thank you, Emmy. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Cash.
No, Lee, go 1, 2, like that.
Yeah. Lee,
Okay.
you do that.
1, 2.
1, 2.